The Galactic Council met in a great hall built inside a hollowed-out asteroid near the center of known space. The walls shimmered with soft blue light, and the air hummed with the quiet energy of 1,000 translators working at once. Delegates from over 200 species sat in curved rows, their forms as varied as the stars they came from, some scaled, some feathered, some made of metal and light. At the center of it all stood Daniel Carter, the youngest human ever sent to speak before the council. He wore a plain gray uniform with no medals, no flashy insignia, just the small earth pin on his collar. His hands were steady, but his heart pounded like a drum. He had practiced his speech 100 times, but now, facing the full weight of the galaxy's oldest powers, the words felt too small. An ancient threat is waking, he began, voice clear despite the dryness in his throat. Beyond the Veil Nebula, our deep-range sensors picked up energy patterns that don't match any known civilization. They pulse in rhythms that echo warnings from old human myths, stories passed down long before we left our planet. A ripple of murmurs moved through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward. Most leaned back. Ambassador Krell of the Vorn hegemony, a hulking creature with armored skin and 3 blinking eyes, let out a low, rumbling chuckle. "Myths?" he said, his voice crackling through the translator. "You bring nursery tales to a council of star-forged empires?" Laughter followed, soft at first, then louder. A bird-like delegate from the Sylth Collective flapped her wings in amusement. Even the usually stoic Zenthar observers exchanged glances that might have been smiles. Daniel didn't flinch. "Our myths come from real events," he said. "Before we had ships, before we even had electricity, our ancestors watched the skies and recorded things they couldn't explain. Now with our telescopes and quantum scanners, we're seeing the same signs again." He tapped a small device on his wrist. A hologram bloomed above the floor, a swirling cloud of violet and black, the Veil Nebula, with red markers pulsing along its edge. "These signals appeared 3 months ago. They're growing stronger, and they're moving." Council Chair Lyra Voss, a slender being with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury, raised a graceful hand. The laughter faded. "Envoy Carter," she said gently, "we respect Earth's enthusiasm, but you've only been part of the galactic community for 87 standard years. Many young species mistake cosmic background noise for omens." She gestured to a screen behind her showing peaceful star charts. "The Veil Nebula is unstable, yes, but it has been for millennia. There is no fleet, no weapon, no invasion, only gas and gravity." Daniel took a breath. "Then why did Outpost Theta 9 go silent last week?" "It was monitoring that exact region. Its last transmission was cut off mid-sentence." A few delegates shifted. Theta 9 was a joint observation post funded by 6 major powers. Its silence had been noted, but dismissed as a power failure. "Maintenance drones were dispatched," Lyra replied. "They found nothing unusual. Likely a solar flare. But the logs are being reviewed," she interrupted, not unkindly. "Your concern is noted. But without physical proof, a ship, a weapon, a signal we can all verify, this remains speculation. The Council cannot divert resources based on human folklore." Daniel looked around. He saw pity in some eyes, boredom in others. No one believed him. "Not really," he bowed slightly. "Thank you for your time, Chair Voss." He stepped down from the speaker's platform, the hologram fading behind him like a dying star. Back in his quarters, a small, windowless room assigned to Earth's delegation, he sat on the edge of his bunk and stared at the wall. It wasn't anger he felt, but a deep cold dread. He knew what his people had seen. He'd read the raw data himself. The signals weren't random. They repeated in prime number sequences. They responded to active scans with delayed echoes, like something listening. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Morgan had spent weeks analyzing the patterns. She'd called him the night before his speech, her voice tight with fear. "It's not just energy, Daniel," she'd said. "It's intelligence. And it's learning." Now, alone in the quiet hum of the station, he opened a secure channel to Sol Command. The face of Captain Owen Grant appeared on his screen. Tired eyes, short-cropped hair, the scar on his left cheek from a skirmish near Mars. They laughed. Daniel said simply. Owen didn't look surprised. "Figured they would." "What's the Council doing?" "Nothing." "They called it a local anomaly," Owen grunted. "Then we prepare alone. Project Aegis is already underway. Neil Foster's team has the first phase shield prototype running on the Resolute. It's not perfect, but it bends light and energy in ways nothing else can. Daniel nodded. Good. And Grace Bell? Has she found anything in the archives? More than we wanted, Owen said, lowering his voice. She uncovered records from before the Great Burn, pre-industrial texts that describe sky eaters who came every 10,000 years. They didn't attack cities. They just erased them. No rubble, no bodies. Like they were never there. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. That matched the Theta 9 report exactly. Tell Lisa to keep scanning, Owen said, and tell her to watch for gaps, not just in signals, but in memory. If these things can alter data, they might be messing with our minds too. Daniel ended the call and walked to the small viewport in his room. Outside, ships from a dozen worlds drifted past. Gleaming cruisers, cargo haulers, luxury yachts. Life went on, unaware. He thought of his sister back in Chicago, teaching her students about constellations. He thought of farmers in Kenya, engineers in Oslo, fishermen in Vietnam, all living under the same sky, dreaming the same small dreams. None of them knew that something ancient and hungry was stirring in the dark, and the galaxy's guardians, the wise, the powerful, the eternal council, had laughed at the warning. Daniel made a decision. If no one would listen, then humanity would act alone, not out of pride but out of duty. They had been the last to join the galactic family, but maybe that was why they saw what others had forgotten, that the universe was not always kind, and silence could be the loudest warning of all. He opened another channel, this time to President Elena Ruiz. Her face appeared calm but alert. They dismissed us, he said. She didn't sigh, didn't curse. She just nodded. Then we ready the fleet, quietly. Tell Owen to prepare for deployment. And Daniel, thank you for trying. He closed the link and sat in the dim light, listening to the distant thrum of the station. Somewhere far away, beyond the glittering stars and the safe lanes of trade, something was coming. And when it arrived, the galaxy would learn that humanity didn't need permission to protect what it loved. Weeks passed after Daniel Carter's warning was dismissed by the Galactic Council. Life on the diplomatic station Xylos Prime returned to its usual rhythm. Delegates argued over trade routes, ambassadors hosted lavish dinners, and junior aides like Daniel buried themselves in reports no one read. But far beyond the glittering lights of the station, in the cold dark near the Veil Nebula, silence spread like a stain. It started with Outpost Theta 9, the joint monitoring station that had gone quiet. Then came Theta 8, a smaller relay buoy run by the Helios Concord. Its last message was a single word: gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. The signal cut off so cleanly that engineers at first thought it was a glitch, but when repair drones arrived, they found nothing, not even debris. Just empty space where a station should have been. Then Theta 7 vanished. Then a Vorn patrol cruiser on routine sweep near the nebula's edge. Its captain had sent a cheerful update just minutes before. All clear. Quiet as a tomb. The tomb, it seemed, had swallowed him whole. Back on Xylos Prime, whispers turned to worried glances. Still, the council refused to act. Coincidence, declared Ambassador Krell, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Solar storms. Rogue black holes. Anything but ghosts. But Daniel Carter knew better. He spent his nights reviewing every scrap of data Earth's deep space network could send. Lisa Morgan, working from a secure lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, fed him updates daily. The gaps are growing, she told him during one late-night call. It's not just ships disappearing. Sensor logs are rewriting themselves. Yesterday, Theta 9 showed a full power reading. Today, the same log says it failed 3 weeks ago. The data is changing after the fact. Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. If reality itself was being altered, how could anyone prove the threat was real? He wasn't alone in his fears. Mara Lynn, a young astrophysicist from the Helios Concord, had been quietly tracking the anomalies. She'd lost a friend on Theta 8. One evening, she found Daniel in the station's observation lounge, staring at the starfield where the Veil Nebula lay hidden. They won't listen, she said, sitting beside him. Her voice was soft but sharp with frustration. I showed the science committee thermal echoes from the cruiser's last position. They said it was instrument error. Daniel nodded. They're afraid. Admitting this is real means admitting they're not in control. Mara leaned forward. What if we prove it another way? Not with data, with witnesses. Someone who saw it happen. That gave Daniel an idea. He remembered a freighter captain named Jess Harlow, human, who'd filed a distress call near Theta 7 just before it vanished. Her ship, the Wayfarer, had barely escaped. The council had dismissed her report as panic-induced hallucination, but Daniel hadn't. He tracked her down in Docking Bay 12, where she was repairing a damaged thruster. Jess was in her 40s with sun-weathered skin and eyes that had seen too much. She listened as Daniel explained his plan. "You want me to testify again?" she asked, wiping grease from her hands. "They called me a drunk last time. This time we record everything. Your ship's logs, your biometrics, your words uncut. And we broadcast it to every newsnet in the sector." Jess hesitated. "They'll blacklist me. Tow Cargo Company will hire me again. Or," Daniel said gently, "you'll be the reason the galaxy wakes up in time." She looked at the stars through the bay's transparent shield. "Fine," she said. "But I want Mara Lynn there." She's honest. And smart. The next day, in a borrowed conference room, Jess Harlow spoke plainly. She described how the stars ahead of her ship had simply blinked out. Not gone dark, erased. Like someone had cut a hole in the sky. Then a wave of cold, not temperature but absence, passed through her vessel. Her crew screamed as their memories flickered. "One man forgot his own name for 10 minutes. The ship's AI rebooted itself 3 times. I didn't see monsters," Jess said, voice steady. "I saw nothing. And that was the worst part." Mara Lynn presented the raw sensor data from the Wayfarer. Unlike official logs, this hadn't been filtered or corrected. It showed a distortion field moving faster than light, leaving no energy trail, no radiation, just a perfect void. For a moment, the room was silent. Even the ever-skeptical Krell looked uneasy. But the council chair, Lyra Voss, still refused to act. "One ship, one captain. Interesting, but not conclusive. We need more." That night, Daniel received a priority message from Earth. President Elena Ruiz appeared on his screen, her face grim. "Project Aegis is moving to Phase 2, she said. "Owen Grant's fleet is ready for limited deployment. We're sending 3 ships to the edge of the Veil Nebula, not to fight but to observe. If what you're seeing is real, we'll record it with hardened systems that can't be rewritten." Daniel felt a flicker of hope. "The Council won't allow armed ships near the nebula." "Then we won't ask," Elena replied. "We're not their soldiers. We're their neighbors. And neighbors help when the house is on fire, even if the owner denies the smoke." Meanwhile, on Mars, engineers led by Neil Foster worked around the clock. The phase shield technology was untested in deep space, but early trials showed it could bend certain types of exotic energy. If the threat from the Veil was based on reality manipulation, the shield might create a bubble of stable physics, a safe zone. Back on Xylos Prime, Daniel and Mara continued gathering evidence. They found more witnesses, miners, scouts, even a Vorn scout drone operator who admitted his unit had lost 2 drones in the same sector. Each story was the same: sudden silence, missing time, vanished objects. But before they could present their findings, the unthinkable happened. A luxury liner, the Celestial Dawn, carrying over 2,000 passengers from 6 species, failed to arrive at its destination. It had passed near the outer rim of the Veil Nebula on its scheduled route. When search teams arrived, they found nothing. No distress call, no wreckage, not even a single life pod. This time, the Council couldn't ignore it. Emergency sessions were called. Security patrols doubled, yet still no one spoke of invasion or ancient threats. They used words like unexplained phenomenon and temporary spatial anomaly. Daniel watched the debates from the gallery, heart heavy. They were rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. That evening, Jess Harlow found him again. "My brother was on that liner," she said quietly. "He sent me a message the night before. Said the stars looked wrong near the nebula, like they were watching." Daniel didn't know what to say. There were no words big enough for that kind of loss. But Jess wasn't looking for comfort. "When your ships go out there," she said, "take me with you." "I know what to look for," he nodded. "I'll see what I can do." As the station buzzed with nervous energy, Earth's fleet prepared in secret. The UNS Resolute, flanked by the Dauntless and the Horizon, slipped away from lunar dockyards under cover of a solar flare. Their mission was simple: go to the edge of the Veil, activate the phase shields, and record everything. No one knew if they'd return. But someone had to look into the dark. And if the galaxy wouldn't listen, Humanity would go alone. The attack came without sound, without warning, without even a flicker of light to mark its beginning. One moment, Xylos Prime was alive with the hum of 1,000 ships, the chatter of diplomats, the glow of commerce and peace. The next, entire sections of the station simply ceased to exist. It started in the outer residential ring. A family of Sylph, mother, father, 2 young ones, were eating dinner when the wall behind them vanished. Not crumbled, not exploded, vanished, as if it had never been built. Then the floor beneath them disappeared. Then they did. No scream, no flash, just empty air where lives had been. Alarms blared, but too late. The distortion spread inward like ink in water. Corridors blinked out of reality. Gardens turned to void. A shuttle bay holding 12 vessels became a hollow shell. Ships, pilots, fuel all gone as though erased from history itself. Panic erupted. Delegates scrambled for escape pods. Security forces fired weapons into the nothingness, but beams passed through empty space and struck distant walls, causing more chaos. Ambassador Krell roared orders to his Vorn guards, but half of them were already missing. Their armor and weapons dissolved into silence. In his quarters, Daniel Carter felt the station shudder, not from impact but from absence. The lights flickered, then stabilized, but something felt wrong. The air tasted thin, like memory itself was fading. He ran to the observation lounge where he'd sat with Mara Lynn just days before. Now half the room was gone. The viewport showed only black where stars should have been. Mara found him there, breathless, her data pad clutched to her chest. "It's here," she whispered. "The hollow, they're real." "The what?" "That's what Jess Harlow called them. Not a name, a description. They don't destroy, they hollow out reality." Before Daniel could respond, the floor beneath them trembled. A wave of cold passed through the corridor. A cold that wasn't temperature but the feeling of being forgotten. A maintenance drone nearby flickered, then vanished mid-motion. "We have to get off this station," Daniel said. They ran toward the diplomatic docks, dodging crowds and falling debris that wasn't really falling, just appearing where structure had been removed. They passed a Zenthar delegate frozen in place, eyes wide, muttering the same word over and over. "Gone. Gone. Gone." At Docking Bay 7, they found Jess Harlow already prepping her ship, the Wayfarer. She'd ignored evacuation orders, waiting for them. "Knew you'd come," she said, tossing Daniel a flight vest. "Get in." "We're leaving." Tarn, the old Zenthar observer who'd once listened to Daniel's warning, stood by the ramp. His usually calm face was tight with fear. "I go with you," he said. "My people ignored the signs too. I will not ignore them again." There was no time to argue. They boarded just as the bay doors began to dissolve. Jess slammed the engines to full thrust and the Wayfarer shot into open space seconds before the entire docking ring disappeared. Outside, the horror was worse. Xylos Prime, once a jewel of galactic unity, was being unmade. Great chunks of the asteroid station flickered in and out of existence. Ships that tried to flee either vanished mid-jump or reappeared broken. Their crews confused, some unable to remember their own names. Jess steered clear of the distortion waves, her hands steady on the controls. "They move in pulses," she said. "Like breathing. We stay between the breaths." Mara pulled up a star chart on the ship's console. "We can't go to any major hub. If this spreads, they'll all fall. Then we go to Sol," Daniel said. "Earth is ready," Tarn nodded slowly. "The young species warned us." Now only they remained standing. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, Daniel sent a final message on an open emergency channel, encrypted just enough to avoid immediate corruption. "This is Envoy Daniel Carter of Earth. The threat is real." "It is here. The Council ignored us. Now only Earth stands between the galaxy and oblivion." He didn't know if anyone would hear it, but someone had to say it. Back in Sol system, alarms blared across Lunar Command. Captain Owen Grant stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolute, watching the long-range sensors flare red. Not with enemy ships, but with gaps. Reality gaps. And they were spreading faster than light. "Get me President Ruiz," he ordered. Her face appeared on screen, pale but resolute. "We saw the last transmission from Xylos. It's happening." "Yes, ma'am. And it's heading this way." "Then execute Plan Sentinel. Full fleet deployment. All civilian ships to inter-system shelters. Activate the orbital phase grid." Owen turned to his crew. "All ships form defensive line at Neptune's orbit. Shields to maximum. Broadcast the resonance signal on loop, just in case." Below, on Earth, cities dimmed their lights. Schools closed. Families gathered in underground shelters not built for war, but for something worse, the end of what was real. In Chicago, Daniel's sister held her students close, telling them stories to keep their minds sharp, their memories strong. In the Rocky Mountains, Lisa Morgan and Neil Faust worked side by side, feeding final calibrations into the global shield network. If the Hollow rewrite reality, Lisa said, fingers flying over keys, we give them something they can't erase, human noise. Music, voices, laughter, chaos, Neil nodded. Order can be undone. But chaos is eternal. On Mars, factories ran non-stop, building more phase emitters. In orbit, the Dauntless and Horizon took position beside the Resolute, their hulls glowing faintly with activated shields. No one knew if it would work. But they would not hide. They would not run. They would stand. And as the first ripple of the Hollow reached the outer edge of the solar system, brushing against Pluto's frozen plains, the fleet held its ground. Owen Grant stood tall on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. Play them the blues, he said softly. Play them everything we are. And from every ship, every station, every hidden bunker on Earth, a signal rose, not of weapons, but of life. A symphony of human sound poured into the void. Raw and messy and full of heart, the Hollow paused. For the first time in eons, something had surprised them. And in that pause, humanity made its stand. The UNS Resolute hung in the silent dark beyond Neptune, its hull shimmering with the soft blue glow of active phase shields. Around it, the Dauntless and Horizon held position, their crews quiet, eyes fixed on the void ahead. There, at the edge of the solar system, the stars began to blink out, not one by one, but in waves, like a tide of nothingness rolling toward them. Captain Owen Grant stood on the bridge, arms crossed, jaw set. He'd seen war before, skirmishes near Mars, pirate raids in the belt, but this was different. This wasn't fire and metal, this was absence, and absence was harder to fight. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Morgan and Dr. Neil Foster worked at a shared console, feeding data into the ship's main emitter array. They'd barely slept in 3 days. Their eyes were red, their hands trembling with caffeine and fear, but their focus never wavered. It's not a weapon, Lisa had explained earlier, voice low but urgent. It's a pattern. The Hollow, they're not alive like us. They're echoes of a dead civilization that tried to escape the end of time by folding reality into itself. To them, living things are errors, noise in a perfect silence. Neil nodded, adjusting a frequency dial. So we don't fight them. We confuse them. Overload their logic with something they can't compute. That something was humanity. Back on Earth, historian Grace Bell had spent weeks digging through ancient archives, paper books, digital backups, even oral recordings saved from before the Great Burn. She'd found a thread running through every culture, stories of sky eaters, void walkers, beings that came when the world grew too loud. And in every tale, the only thing that drove them back was sound, music, prayer, laughter, even crying. They don't understand emotion, Grace had told Owen over a secure link. Their entire existence is based on order, on stillness. Human chaos is like static in their minds. Now that theory was about to be tested. Owen gave the order. Begin broadcast. Full spectrum. All channels. At once the Resolute's emitters hummed to life, not with weapons fire, but with sound. First came Beethoven's Ninth, grand, sweeping, full of joy and struggle. Then a Mississippi blues riff, raw and aching. Then a lullaby sung by a mother in Nairobi. A child's laugh from Oslo. A street performer's drumbeat in Rio. A poem read in Tokyo. A farmer's whistle in Iowa. Every note, every voice, every heartbeat of Earth poured into space like a river of light. The Hollow kept coming. For a long minute, nothing changed. The wave of silence crept closer, swallowing asteroids, bending starlight, turning space into blank canvas. On the bridge, tension thickened. A young ensign gripped the edge of her console, knuckles white. Then something flickered. At the leading edge of the distortion, a single star reappeared. Then another. The void rippled like water struck by a stone. The Hollow slowed. It's working, Lisa whispered. Neil adjusted the resonance frequency, weaving in more layers. Birdsong at dawn, ocean waves, the crackle of a campfire, the hum of a subway train. Give them more, he said. More life. More mess. Owen watched the main display. The distortion wasn't retreating, but it was stuttering, like a machine trying to process an impossible input. On the horizon, engineers patched in live feeds from Earth shelters. A choir in Mumbai sang. A jazz band in New Orleans played. Kids in a school basement clapped a rhythm they'd made up that morning. The signal grew richer, wilder, louder with the beautiful disorder of human existence. The hollow responded, not with attack, but with confusion. Their perfect silent wave began to fracture. Patches of normal space reformed. Sensor ghosts appeared. Phantom ships, false stars, echoes of things that had never been. Their logic was breaking. They're trying to rewrite the signal, Lisa said, eyes wide. But they can't, it's too random. Too alive. Owen turned to comms. Tell all ships, keep broadcasting. Don't stop for anything. Jess Harlow's voice crackled over the channel. She'd brought the Wayfarer to join the line despite having no weapons. I'm sending them my brother's last message, she said, voice thick. His voice. His laugh. Let them hear what they took. Mara Lynn, now aboard the Resolute after escaping Xylos Prime, added her own touch. Recordings of alien songs from the Helios Conquered. Sylph morning chants, even a Vorn battle hymn. If we're going to save the galaxy, she said, we save all of it. The broadcast became a chorus of 1,000 worlds, led by one small, stubborn species that refused to be erased. And then, the impossible happened. The leading edge of the hollow collapsed. Not exploded, collapsed inward like a bubble popping. Violet light flared once, then faded. Where the distortion had been, space returned to normal. Stars shone. Asteroids drifted. Silence gave way to the gentle hum of the cosmos. One by one, the gaps closed. On the bridge, no one cheered. They just stared, breathless, as the last ripple of the hollow dissolved into harmless quantum foam. It's over, Neil said, slumping into his chair. Lisa shook her head. No, it's sleeping. They're still out there, but they won't come back while we keep singing. Owen looked at Earth on the view screen, a blue-green marble, fragile and bright. He thought of his niece in Denver, who'd sent him a drawing that morning, a spaceship with wings flying past a smiling sun. He thought of Daniel Carter, still missing, last seen fleeing Xylos Prime. He thought of everyone who'd believed even when no one else would. Send a message to Sol Command, he said, threat neutralized. For now. Then he turned to his crew. Keep the broadcast running. Rotate the playlist every hour. Add new voices daily. Let the universe know. We're still here. Back on Earth, people emerged from shelters into sunlight. They didn't know the details, only that the sky was safe again. In Chicago, Daniel's sister took her students outside and taught them a new song. One about courage, and stars and never staying quiet when the dark comes. And far out in the deep, the music played on, messy, joyful, defiant. Not a weapon, a promise. As long as humans remembered who they were, the Hollow would never win. The rebuilt council chamber on Xylos Prime was quieter now. The walls still shimmered, but the light was softer, more humble. The grand seats once filled with proud ambassadors now held beings who had seen their certainty crumble. Many were new faces, survivors, replacements, those who had lost friends, family, entire worlds to the silence that nearly swallowed everything. At the center of it all stood Daniel Carter, not in a plain gray uniform this time, but in the deep blue of Earth's diplomatic service, the Earth pin still on his collar, now gleaming under the chamber's gentle glow. He had returned not as a beggar for attention, but as a witness. The Wayfarer had brought him, Jess Harlow, Mara Lynn, and Tarn back through the quiet lanes of space, past drifting wreckage and silent stations that would never speak again. They came not to gloat, but to remind. The council chair, Lyra Voss, rose slowly. Her silver skin seemed duller, her liquid eyes clouded with regret. Envoy Carter, she began, voice barely above a whisper. We owe you more than words. We owe you our existence, Daniel shook his head. We didn't do it for thanks. We did it because it was right. When you laughed, we didn't stop warning. When you ignored us, we didn't stop preparing. And when the dark came, we didn't hide. A murmur moved through the chamber, not of doubt, but of awe. Ambassador Krell, his armored frame smaller somehow, stood with effort. I called your warning a myth, he said, his translator struggling to carry the weight of his shame. I was wrong. My people are gone from 3 colonies. I would trade every title I owned to hear them laugh again. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Tarn, the old Zenthar, stepped forward. The young species saw what the old had forgotten, that the universe is not safe. It never was. But courage can make it survivable. Chair Voss raised her hand. By unanimous vote of the surviving council members, Earth is granted a permanent seat on this body. Not as a junior member, but as co-guardian of galactic security. All defense protocols will now require Earth's approval. A ripple of agreement followed. Some delegates bowed their heads. Others clapped softly, respectfully. But Daniel wasn't finished. There's more, he said. The Hollow didn't die. They retreated. They're still out there, waiting for silence to return. So we must never be silent again. He turned to Mara Lynn, who stepped forward with a data slate. We propose the Harmony Initiative, she announced. Every world, human or not, will contribute sounds, songs, stories, and signals to a shared broadcast network. Not for war, for memory, for life. The resonance that drove back the Hollow must never fade. Even the most skeptical delegates nodded. After all, it was sound, human sound, that had saved them. Later on the observation deck, Daniel watched ships from a dozen worlds dock side by side, no longer in rivalry, but in shared purpose. Jess Harlow joined him, arms crossed, eyes on the stars. They gave you a seat, she said. What now? I speak, he said simply. And I listen. That's how we stay alive. Back on Earth, celebrations were quiet but deep. There were no parades, no grand speeches. People gathered in parks, on rooftops, in kitchens, sharing meals and music. In Chicago, Daniel's sister played a recording of the Resolute's broadcast for her students. The blues riff, the lullaby, the child's laugh. That's us, she told them. That's what saved everyone. In orbit, the UNS Resolute remained on watch. Captain Owen Grant walked the decks, checking on his crew. They were tired but proud. On the bridge, Neil Foster and Lisa Morgan monitored the Harmony Network's first live feed. A choir from Kyoto singing with a Vorn throat singer, their voices blending in a harmony no one had thought possible. President Elena Ruiz addressed the world that evening, not from a podium, but from her garden. We didn't win a war, she said. We reminded the universe that life matters. That noise, our noise, is worth protecting. And in the deep, the music played on. Not just from Earth, but from Sylph nests, Zenthar monasteries, Helios academies, even Vorn warships. A galaxy that once valued silence now cherished sound. Months later, a small ceremony was held on Mars. The star conquered, the highest honor the old council had ever given, was placed in Owen Grant's hands. He accepted it not for himself, but for every engineer, scientist, teacher, child, and dreamer who had added their voice to the song. Grace Bell stood nearby, holding a book of ancient myths now updated with a new chapter. How the Sky Eaters were driven back by a lullaby. Daniel returned to Earth for the first time in over a year. He walked the streets of his hometown unnoticed, listening to street musicians, to conversations in cafes, to the wind in the trees. It all sounded sweeter now. He visited his sister's school. The children ran to him, not knowing he was a hero, only that he was her brother. One little girl tugged his sleeve. Did you really fight the monsters in space? She asked. He knelt. We didn't fight them with guns. We fought them with songs. And stories. And love. She thought about that. Can I help? He smiled. Sing something. Anything. She did. A simple tune about stars and cats. And in that moment, Daniel knew the galaxy would be safe. Not because of shields or fleets, but because of moments like this. Small, human, full of heart. Far away, beyond the Veil Nebula, the void remained still. But now it was no longer empty. It was filled with echoes of life. Messy, loud, beautiful life. And the Hollow, wherever they slept, would think twice before waking again.